Hi crafty friends, my name's Renee Wilson. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making a card focused on one of my favorite techniques, paper piercing. Let's get started. Today we're going to be making a friendship card using the Simon Says Stamp Deco Hearts die. This is an intricate die that we're going to be doing some paper piecing in. It has this really awesome border, so we're going to see how we can use that to actually use double-sided adhesive to make the paper piecing a little bit easier. So the first step, I'm going to take some double-sided adhesive here. I'm going to peel off and stick down onto a piece of Nina Classic Crest Solar White 110-pound cardstock. I wanted to use this heavy base cardstock so that my heart, which I'm going to pop up on the card, has strength and stability once we do the paper piecing on top of it. So as you can see, I'm just going to run this through my Anna Griffin Impress die cut machine. This has the adhesive paper still on one side so that we can keep it covered up, and then the adhesive was stuck down to the paper on the other side. I'm going to run this through my machine, take it apart. What you'll see later in the video is that this base actually ends up being larger than the die cutting piece, but we can just trim that off once we've done the paper piecing on top. That actually gives us a little bit of wiggle room. Next, I'm going to take a few different colors of cardstock here and cut out the intricate die itself. So I'm going to start with some green cardstock. This is Concord and 9th Sprout. Put the intricate die down on top again, run it through my Impress machine. Then what you're going to see is I'm going to flip it over here. Since this is such an intricate die, we want to try and keep all of the small pieces in the form itself since we're going to do paper piecing. So I'm going to slide the magnet off of the back here. Most of the pieces stay in the die, which is really great. Those couple of small pieces that got moved around a little bit, I just pop back into place with my finger, and then I grab some Glad Press and Seal, which is really awesome for paper piecing with intricate dies like this. So I'm just going to take off a piece and then press it down onto the back of the die that we just ran through, so that all of those small intricate die cuts actually stay in the shape and in the place that they are in the die. I'm going to run my bone folder over it here so that we burnished a little bit, and look at how cleanly it comes off. All in one piece, all of the little pieces in their place. So I followed this same process for a couple of additional colors of cardstock, including Simon Says Stamp Cotton Candy that you can see in the corner here, and Tailored Expressions Guava. Then I also took some gold shiny cardstock that I had in my stash, and I cut out the same intricate die. I didn't need to flip this one over and worry about getting the same intricate pieces kept in their place with the press and seal, because all I was going to be using is the frame to actually insert the pieces in their places. So I just pulled it off like normal. Here I am pulling off the protective coating, so now the top of that heart is sticky. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up this frame from my die cutting mat. I'm going to grab one of my Cricut weeding tools. I'm not sure if it has a specific name. I just use it to poke out the little pieces. And any of the intricate pieces that are still remaining in the border to this die, I'm just going to poke those out. If you were going to use those for another project, you could retain them, use the same press and seal hack. But for me, I'm just using the frame here, so no need to retain those, just kind of poking them out, and then I will toss them aside. Once I have all those pieces popped out, I'm going to go ahead and stick that frame down onto the double-sided adhesive sticky part that I created at the beginning of this video. Again, I'm going to take the kind of top sheet that I peeled off there and then use my bone folder to burnish it down. You're going to see I'm going to flip it over. Because this is the frame and this is where you fit all of those inlaid pieces into, I want to make sure that it's very tightly adhered to the adhesive sheet underneath. As you can see here, there are no gaps, really pretty. That gold shimmers awesome in the light. Now we're ready to actually start with the inlay process. So as you can see, I also cut the die out of a piece of glitter cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm going to go ahead. I knew that I wanted this little heart in the middle to be the focal point of the image. So I'm going to use the glitter cardstock to inlay the pieces into the die frame that I attached to the double-sided adhesive sheet. So it's sticky, and all I have to do therefore is take the piece from the die cut on the press and seal and then just place it down into the frame. It kind of fits in like a puzzle. As you can see, I'm using one of my Cricut weeding tools here to hold this sort of edge of the heart shape so that I have sort of somehow to stabilize it while I'm actually inlaying these pieces. Although you have to trim off this edge, since I said that solid heart shape was a little bit larger than the intricate die heart shape, that's okay because it actually gives you some surface to use here. So after I get done with a color or a section, I am always going to burnish it down again to make sure that it's held in there closely. The next color that I started to use, again, is the Concord and Ninth Sprout. I'm showing you there are these little leaf-like shapes in the die, so I thought that they would look nice and green. I thought that I would go ahead and do that in the next color because I had it in front of me and those were little small areas that the shape was really clear what color it was going to be. What I actually found, and one tip that I had for you, and if I was doing this exact project again, I would not start with these smaller areas. If you start with a smaller color, you can kind of see it makes it a little bit more difficult to actually inlay the pieces, because if they fall off of your tweezers or your pierce and place tool, there is a lot more adhesive that is exposed that they can get stuck to and actually end up in the wrong section, making the piecing process more difficult for you. What I'd recommend is starting with the largest areas of exposed adhesive first. So I get everything pieced together, I'm burnishing it again, and ready. I'm going to flip it over, burnish it one final time from the back, make sure everything's nice and adhered, and then we are ready for the big reveal. I am so excited. When I got this all pieced together, it absolutely made it worth it. Isn't that stunning? I'm so excited with how this turned out. Just working through the colors one at a time, you kind of see I tried to make it so that the colors flowed together well. And then, like I said at the beginning, since that bottom piece is larger than the intricate die heart shape, you do have to trim off that excess adhesive piece that is sticking out from the back of the intricate die cut. It's not a problem. I'm really loving these Spellbinder scissors. They are adhesive resistant, so you can see I'm cutting here directly on what is an adhesive that is exposed, and they have no problem sticking, which is awesome. So once I get it all cut out, it's ready to go. I'm placing it here on this piece of paper, kind of visualizing whether I want to cut down the colored background. I do ultimately get it to trim a little bit. I think that the dimensions that I ended up using for this piece, I took 1/4 of an inch off of each side. But as you'll see, I end up wanting it to be even a little bit smaller so that there's a nice white border once I mount the entire thing on my A2 card base. So just for clarity, this is a panel that was originally cut to 5.5 by 4.25. There you can see I actually took off a little bit more. I think that I took off 1/2 inch on both sides. Now I'm just spritzing down the piece of cardstock. I'm spritzing it with water on both sides before I put it through my embossing folder. This is a Spellbinders embossing folder. It was the embossing folder of the December 2023. It's called Tiled Hearts, and I thought that it would be absolutely fantastic on this card. So I'm just lining it up. I wanted there to be sort of an equal pattern, wanted to make sure that my heart was going to be centered. After running it through my Anna Griffin Impress machine, it looked good, so it is just a 2D embossing folder. I'm not actually in love with the sandwich that I used here. You'll see on the edges of the finished card, the embossing is a little light, so I probably need to play with that. Here I'm just showing I have some pre-made A2 card bases. Those are made of Neenah Classic Crest Solar White. I love the art glitter glue for the actual adhesion of my pieces. And one thing I wanted to point out at this step here is that gold mirror cardstock that I used. I actually cut the frame of the intricate die heart out of the center of that because those expensive sort of specialty cardstocks are a little bit more expensive, and it's helpful to make the best use as you can. Once this is mounted onto the card base, you're never going to know, the recipient's never going to know that anything was die cut from the back, and it does allow me to make the best use of my materials. So I'm just adhering this down. I wanted the gold border to be very small behind it to keep in line with the delicate nature of the gold embellished heart design on the actual inlaid piece. So once I have everything together, I'm just getting it all adhered, centered, cleaned up. I got a little bit of glue seepage. I probably used too much glue. That tends to be one of my habits, is using too much glue, especially on embossed pieces. It kind of comes out the edge sometimes, but that's okay. While it's still wet, it cleans up very well off of that mirror cardstock. So once I'm happy, I wanted to show just that little border around the edge. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to go ahead and put something heavy on it just to make sure that it's drying nice and flat. There is a little bit of warping because of that center missing on the gold piece. And then also with the embossing folder, I want to make sure that the edges dry down flat. I'm going to go ahead and get some Altenew foam tape here and cover the entire back of my heart shape. I usually use die cut pieces behind in the same shape to give my projects dimension, but here, since I didn't have the solid heart in the correct size, since we had to trim this down, I decided to go with foam tape. I do always, when I use foam tape, add some glue to the back so I have more time to adjust and move around the die cut to make sure it's lined up perfectly on my project. So I stick it down approximately where I want it, and then you can make, again, small movements by adding the glue. So that's a tip that I really think is useful for upping your card making game. There you see me adjust it, get it centered up with the embossing pattern from my folder. And here you can see the really nice dimension that is added by the foam tape. So again, I put the weight on top to let that settle in, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. I'm using the Pretty Pink Posh Sentiment Strip Valentine pieces. I lined them up there just to see which one I liked the fit of, and then I am sticking down some Neenah Classic Crest Solar White 110 pound paper in my Misty. It also has a waffle flower grip mat. I find that's really fantastic for stamping in the same place without having to use a magnet. And then I am using my Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks in the color Watermelon. That seemed to be the ink color that most closely aligned to the guava cardstock. And I'm just gently tapping on the paper to get that sentiment stamped. With these really tiny sentiments, if you press too hard, the stamping can kind of spread out on you and get wide. Once I have stamped that twice, I cut it out just using my paper trimmer. And here you can kind of see a little bit of the process in determining where I want it to go. I originally thought that it would go below the heart, but I thought that the white cardstock was a bit stark underneath of the main focal point, the die cut inlaid heart. So instead, I decided to place it over the heart. As you can see from that glue piece, I used foam strips on the edges, and then I did not use a foam strip in the middle because the foam strip behind the heart with all of the die cut inlay is already going to support it in the middle. So this just evens it out at the ends. I just mess with it a little bit to make sure that it's straight and take a look at it, and I'm super happy with that. I'm going to get my art glitter glue again and glue this whole card panel onto the front of that A2 card base that I showed before. I always want to make sure that the edges are the most glued, so I always go around the edges with the liquid glue, and then in the middle you can be a little bit more chaotic with your placements. So I sit this down, and I typically line things up by eye, and then with the glue, like we talked about with the placement of the heart die cut, you do have a little bit of wiggle room. So once I place that down, I get it all centered up. Just a little bit of oozing glue out the corner there that I'm cleaning up. So once I have that all placed where I think that it is straight, I'm again going to put down some weighted blocks to make sure that it dries flat. Finally, what is a card if it isn't embellished? I love embellishments. So here I'm just using some Trinity Stamps gold coin, flat sequin embellishments around the sentiment to draw your eye into the center there, and we have a finished card project. I am super excited with how this one turned out. It makes a great Valentine's Day card, but also I'm just going to use it like a friendship card. I am so excited to be participating in the YouTube Hop hosted by Valley Oak Paper, and this month's theme was friendship. I hope you'll hop along to the other participating channels, which are listed on the screen. Thank you for stopping by, and I hope you'll join me on my next video.